Hi, everybody. Barbara Mancuni Smith here. Today we are talking about autoimmunity. So, if any of you have been diagnosed or suspect to have an autoimmune condition, whether it's you or a loved one, this video is for you. So, come in, say hi, share the video because we're going to discuss some important information that could be life-saving for you or your loved ones. Okay, so as you come in, just say hi so that I know that you're watching. Tell me where you're calling from, where you're watching from. So yeah, we can get to know each other if we have never met. And if we have never met, my name is Barbara Manconi Smith, and I'm a nutritional therapist. However, if any of you have read my recent post, I'm starting to define myself more as a transformational facilitator. But this is a conversation for another live. So today we're here to talk about autoimmunity. What is it? Why so much? So many people are being diagnosed. And if you guys know, if you heard, probably now long COVID, the long haulers it is also considered within the autoimmunity spectrum. So basically, for traditional medicine, most of the chronic ailments are considered, they go under autoimmunity. So why is that, and why so much more than the past? So come in and say hi if you are dealing with autoimmunity, if you suspect that you're dealing with autoimmunity, any of your loved ones, even your own kids, because sadly, guys, more and more I see children being plagued with the autoimmunity label. Now, I use the word autoimmunity in quote marks because, as you may know already, or as you will discover during this slide, there's nothing auto about this conditions. Definitely the body is not attacking itself, but for the sake of the conversation, for everybody watching, if you have been given an autoimmune condition label, or if you suspect, because a lot of us look up online, Googles, and see the symptoms. So if you've been having chronic or recurrent pain, digestive issues, you might be suspecting having an autoimmune condition because you have not been able to resolve these issues with diet, exercise, or lifestyle changes. So let's talk about autoimmunity. Let's talk about why it seems that the world is convinced that this specific condition, or a host of conditions, because you guys, right now we're close to 100 conditions listed as under the autoimmune umbrella, including long COVID. So it's important to understand what's happening. Is everybody's autoimmune going crazy? Certainly not. So, but something is definitely happening in your body, right? You can tell if you have the pain, you know that something is going on. It's definitely not in your mind. So, as you come in and say hi, just share with us if you are someone that is dealing with an autoimmune condition. Hey Hans, good to see you. Good to have you there. Hans, are you dealing with an autoimmune condition? Is that why you're watching here? Anyway, for those of you who will be watching in the replay, today we're talking about autoimmunity. What is it? Why is such a reoccurrence and numbers are growing exponentially, and why it seems that seemingly any new disease or any chronic condition is now attributed to an autoimmune response. So if you're coming in, say hi and share with us if you are dealing with a chronic autoimmune condition, if any of the people you live with, the people you love, your kids, your spouse, your father, your mother, your sister, just share with us what is your relationship to autoimmunity. And let's dive into what autoimmunity is, and we're going to start to bust some myths in this call today. So let's look at some numbers. So currently, today, over 150 million people are diagnosed with some level of autoimmunity, but many more we know are walking without a diagnosis. So that's possible, double the number I just gave you. So 150 million currently diagnosed with some level of autoimmunity, 70 million of which are only in the US. So let me just rephrase that. 150 million total, and half of them are in the US. Autoimmunity claims the lives of 450,000 people a year. That means that 500,000 people will die of causes related to autoimmunity. And it is studies are telling us that the average patient with one or more autoimmune condition will have a lifespan that is 26 years shorter. So let me repeat this. If you are dealing with an autoimmune condition, whether it's one or multiple, because as you maybe have heard, autoimmunity doesn't just come, it has to come in pair at least. So if you have, for instance, Hashimoto's, you might end up FRA or lupus. It's very common that to, with time, develop more than one autoimmune condition. We're going to cover it, the whys. But right now, what science is telling us is that the observation is that an average autoimmune patient will live 26 years less than someone with not autoimmunity. But as we discussed, there's 150 million people walking this earth with an autoimmune condition. That means that these 150 million people potentially could have a 30-year lifespan, decrease. So it's important to understand why, because as we said at the beginning, more and more conditions are now listed under the umbrella of autoimmunity. So it's the numbers are staggering and they are a little scary, but that's not what we're discussing here. Here we're discussing why are we seeing this, what I really think and believe to be the real pandemic of our time, which is the increase of autoimmune response. So if anybody is watching, please come in, say hi, and see what we can discover together today. So first of all, let's clear some doubts. The traditional, the allopathic community, traditional medicine will tell you that autoimmunity, it's the body attacking its own tissue. For reasons unknown to them, to the medical community, for reasons unknown to them, the body will attack its own tissues just out of the blue. They sometimes blame it on genetics. And but again, they will tell you, we don't know why it happens and there is no cure. So the first 2-3 assessment from the traditional medical community, which is good morning, they run your blood work, they come back. So you show some antibodies that we attribute to a specific different condition under the autoimmune spectrum. So here you go. You've been slapped with an autoimmune label. Well, of course, you're concerned and you'll ask your doctor, but why, doctor? What happened? Why did I get it? And their answer is, we don't know why that happens. So that's the first statement, which is a wrong statement. Because how can someone treat something that they don't understand? So truthfully, now, if you get into a car accident and you need to be rushed to the hospital for an emergency, please go to the hospital. But for anything related to chronic illness and autoimmune condition, you might want to start to do your own research and see what else is available, because clearly traditional doctors have no clue of what autoimmunity is. In fact, they blatantly tell you that they don't know what it comes. So what hope do you have that they will be able to reverse it or help you treat it? Right? So nobody can treat something they don't understand. Anyway, their first statement is, we don't know why it comes. The second statement is, what we know is the body attacks itself, which is also a wrong statement. The third statement is, cannot be cured. So if you've been slapped with one or more autoimmune condition, you've probably been told there is no cure for it. And, chime in and say if that's the case, if that's the, yes. But the thing is, the doctor is supposed to help us figure things out. However, when we go to doctors, what happens is that we outsource our healing. We basically say, well, you study so many years, you might know more than me. But nobody knows more than your own self when it pertains to your own body. So, but regardless, we're talking about here the options that we have if and when we get diagnosed with some autoimmune condition. So the first one is to go through traditional medicine. And traditional medicine, as we just discussed, is based on 3 assumptions, which is, we don't know why it comes. We know that the body attacks itself simply because we've seen antibodies in the body. And three, there's no cure. So obviously, this is a very hopeless and grim scenario, and that will affect the quality of your life, and not simply because of the diagnosis and the symptoms you may be feeling, but because the conversation you just had with your doctor is a very grim one, is a hopeless one, because it's basically telling you the only solution we got here is to tame your immune system. Why? Because their wrong assumption is that your immune system is attacking itself. So hence, there must be something wrong with your immune system that has to be then forcefully regulated. Never for a second they entertain the idea that the immune system is reacting to something rightfully, meaning the immune system is not gone crazy, but something is definitely happening at your immune system level, right? But because they don't understand what happens, then their treatment, there's no solution, there's only management. And what they offer you as a solution is immune suppressant. Why? Because they start with the assumption that the immune system is attacking itself. Hence, their solution, which is usually a drug related solution, is to tame the symptoms, not figure out the root cause. They don't care to figure out the root cause. They've been telling us for years now there's no cause for autoimmunity. We can just speculate, maybe genetics, maybe environment, but there's no cause for autoimmunity. So since they don't know why it comes, their solution is a drug related solution, which is we're going to tame the symptoms. And how we're going to do that? We're going to suppress the immune system. Now, most of the drugs that you may be on right now, just for you to know, they have never been tested for long-term use. However, your doctor will prescribe these medications for the rest of your life. Why? Because again, what they tell you also is that there's no cure. So they're not expecting you to be cured, to be healed, to reverse your autoimmunity. And I'm talking about reversing autoimmunity here today, not reversing symptoms. We can reverse symptoms in many ways, right? It's like people going to the Weight Watchers. I think at some point the Weight Watchers was telling people that they could eat based on points. And so technically, as long like a piece of cake at points, a salad at points. As long as you stay within your points during the day, then you're gonna lose weight. So their claim was you can lose weight even eating cake. So I'm saying this because you can suppress symptoms in many ways. So you can take medications, drugs. You can get into a heavy antiviral specific restrictive diet that will partially show that the symptoms are in remission for them to just come back later, so that you're cycling on and off symptoms. But none of this addresses the root cause. None of this addresses the root cause, and none of this has the intention to ever reverse autoimmunity. Nobody's really talking about reversing autoimmunity. Everybody's talking about managing autoimmunity. Now, we talked about the allopathic medicine and their perspective, right? Now, we're talking about the functional medicine, because if you guys are familiar, maybe some of you are seeing a functional doctor, or maybe even a naturopathic doctor, or an homeopathic doctor. But what you will hear from them is this. Different than the allopathic community, they think they can help you manage your autoimmunity, but they agree with the allopathic community because most of the functional doctors are MDs to begin with, are general practitioners to begin with, that then open themselves up to functional medicine. So functional medicine agrees with traditional medicine in few things. The body's attacking itself, so even your functional doctor is under the impression that the body's attacking itself. Two, there is no cure, so they're in agreement, because again, they are also doctors. They come from the same line of studies, right? The only difference between functional medicine and traditional medicine is the approach. Functional medicine does not use necessarily immune suppressant. Functional medicine believes that everything originates in the gut, and in this case, they are partially true, because since we're dealing with autoimmunity, right, with immune system dysfunction, then we have to look at where the immune system is, right? And a big part of your immune system is in your gut. However, they're still missing the point. One is the body's not attacking itself. Two, there's no cure. because they're missing the cause, it's hard for them to also provide you with a cure, right? And as I said, the best case scenario, and now I've seen thousands of clients, and I would say probably more than 50% of them with some level of autoimmunity, nobody's truly reversing autoimmunity. Everybody's managing autoimmunity. Now, with the drugs prescribed by allopathic medicine, there are extreme dangers. Why? First, because these drugs, as I said at the beginning, have never been tested for long-term use. But because they tell you that there's no solution, you're going to be prescribed this medication for the rest of your life. There are severe side effects to this medication. So even though you started with a specific chronic condition, an autoimmune condition, the long-term use of this medication will cause other issues that you didn't have to begin with, but there are secondary issues due to the long and extensive use of these medications, whether they are immune suppressant. Imagine what happens when you suppress the immune system. Those drugs make your system more susceptible to obviously more attacks from pathogenic presence to environmental toxins. So the body is basically deprived from the very one weapon that it needed to fend off these attacks, and if ever considered to recover from autoimmunity, the immune system has to be supported, not suppressed. So this is the allopathic medicine. As we said, the functional medicine will concur with allopathic medicine, say there is no cause, there is no cure, but we can manage. Okay? So instead, here I am, based on my clinical experience, telling you that we can reverse autoimmunity, we can erase the cellular memory. What am I saying here? So what medical community will tell you is we need to quiet down the immune system, okay? The functional medicine will tell you we need to reduce the needs for activation, meaning we need to reduce the immune system needs for activation. What they observe is that in the presence of autoimmunity, the immune system seems to be triggered and overacts. So the functional medicine community will tell you, reduce the need for activation. So in a sense, let's manage it and let's tame it down so that instead of having, 100% of symptoms or the intensity of the symptoms, we can reduce that. But none of these scenarios, you guys, are presenting you with a valid solution. They're presenting you with a solution that is aimed at reversing autoimmunity. Again, I'm talking about reversing it, not suppressive symptom, not experiencing, periodic reversal of symptoms. I'm talking about reversing autoimmunity. And the only way you can do that is to erase the cellular memory. What does that mean? It means that cells, and why do I talk cells? Again, we talk about almost 100 conditions that are categorized under autoimmunity. And based on what organ seems to be more affected, you will talk about hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. You will talk about lupus that could, affect your skin, your lungs, your joints. You will talk about RA, MS. I mean, there's, depending on where the fire is, so to speak, in your body, then you'll be given a label. But make no mistake, hear me out here. It is never an individual organ problem. It doesn't matter if you've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's or Graves' disease that pertains to your thyroid. The problem is not in your thyroid. So let me repeat this so that you guys maybe are able to digest this. Even if you've been diagnosed with a specific autoimmune condition that is connected to a specific organ or a set of tissues or your bones, the problem, it's not there. That is where there's a manifestation. But by the time your Hashimoto's has developed, systemically in your body, something has been happening already. They say that autoimmunity, especially condition like Sjogren's, for instance, or scleroderma, it takes 10 to 15 years to be diagnosed. Why? Because their symptoms mimic a lot of other things. And the thing is that traditional doctors, even functional doctors, will never require or request an autoimmune test to test specific antibodies. Only at the end, when they've tried everything, then they will start run some autoimmune test, and then they will see the presence of antibodies. But it is said that antibodies are present in your blood 10 to 15 years before the onset of symptoms. What does it mean? That you may be walking around symptoms free, not even wondering or worry about any autoimmune situation, and yet if your blood got tested today, you might already be seeing antibodies in your blood. Okay, so I was here to explain to you why did I say we can absolutely reverse autoimmunity, but we have to erase the cellular memory. So, as I said, doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, what is the part of the body that is being affected by the so-called autoimmunity. We have to break down the body to three important elements. The fact that every single tissue, every single organ in your body can be reduced to cell. So when we talk about cellular level, I just said to you guys, we have to erase the cellular memory of a specific activation of the immune system. We have to go, every time there's something not working in your body, you can't just work in isolation. I call it, when I teach my coaches, delocalization. You have to delocalize. So if this hurts, if your joint hurts, this is not where the problem is. This is just where it's expressing. But that is not where the problem is. The problem is always systemic. Why? Because you're not a set of isolated organs. I know it's really hilarious and funny to see these people on their lives, with this little body, parts, and taking out the liver, taking out the gut, taking out the heart. But this is, basic level of understanding that my daughter, 5-year-old, maybe could be presented with. But us, to really understand how to reverse things, we have to understand how the body works and how chemistry works. So the body is not a combination of different organs. The body is a combination of cells and two fluid systems. So at the end of the day, the liver is comprised of a bunch of cells. Your gut is comprised of a bunch of cells. So we're a lot of cells. Most of them, believe it or not, non-human cells, right? And you must have heard of the microbiome and the importance for the presence of the balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, right? Good and bad. They have to be balanced. But again, all these cells are non-human. And then there are human cells, of course. So, but our body can be taken down into three essential elements, which is a bunch of cells, two fluid systems, the blood and the lymph, and nerves, right? Okay, so whenever there's an issue, whenever there's pain, whenever there's imbalance, I don't care what the disease is, I don't care if it's part of autoimmunity or not, something is happening at these three levels: your cells, your blood, your lymph, right? So something is happening at cellular level and the cells are damaged. We have to understand why, but the cells get damaged and they can no longer continue their function. Does it make sense? So try to delocalize. It's not your liver the problem, it's not your heart the problem, it's not your gut the problem, it's a cellular problem. Now, by the time that you experience the pain, you experience the symptoms, things have evolved, but things don't start breaking down in your system by the time you feel the pain. That's why it is said that cancer, you may have had cancer in your body 10, 15 years also before an actual diagnosis, before you see the formation of a mass. So what is happening there? Something is happening at cellular level, because at the end of the day, as I just said, we trickle down to cells. What we are is a bunch of cells immersed in two fluid systems, your blood and your lymph. Why? Because your blood feeds the cells, your lymph cleans the cells, okay? So whenever there's an imbalance, we have to figure out what's happening at cellular level. Not what's happening in your gut, not what's happening in your lungs, not what's happening in your liver, what's happening on a cellular level. And so since we are a bunch of cells together, right? Again, forget about this gimmick of here's the liver, here, take it out of the little body here, human body, anatomy class here, this is your intestine. Forget about that. you have to go down to cellular level, because there is where the problem starts, on a cellular level. So this also explains why a lot of people end up with multiple autoimmune condition labels. Why? Because again, the problem was never just your thyroid. If you end up with thyroid problems, a thyroid condition, whether it's Hashimoto's or Graves', most likely you may be on your way to an RA diagnosis, Sjogren's diagnosis, scleroderma diagnosis, lupus diagnosis. So what a minute. First you had a problem in your thyroid. Now it ends up that you have problems in your joints, in your kidneys, in your liver. What's going on? In your skin? Because it was never a localized issue. This is where, based on genetic weaknesses, based on emotional components that we're going to discuss, where it just manifests, first. But the cells are not disconnected between, they're not just cells baiting here in your thyroid in the little cocoon, not connecting or communicating to the rest of the cells in your body. Two fluid systems are in charge of keeping the cells alive and well: your blood, your lymph. So clearly, when you have an issue at cellular level, you have an issue at these two other levels. So are they being fed? Are they being cleaned? Because the cells, remember, they can just take their luggage, go to the liver, poop their toxicity, and then go back to where they belong. The cells have to be clean on site. That's why we have a lymphatic system that goes from head to toe. So I want to enter the conversation with this on this level, so that we're all on the same page when I will be telling you how we're going to reverse autoimmunity. Do you understand? So if you don't, please chime in and let me know. Okay, Michelle, so it's going in and out. Okay, so I don't know, you guys, you let me know if you're able to hear, if there's any issues. Okay, so we're talking about wherever we experience any imbalance, but today we're talking specifically about autoimmunity. Why? Because we have over-under conditions, right, listed under autoimmunity, including long COVID. So most of us will go through life potentially with one or multiple diagnoses of autoimmunity. But what happens, we already discussed what is the offerings and the understanding from the traditional medical community. We also discussed what's the understanding and the solution, so to speak, of the functional medicine, natural alternative community, so to speak, whether it's naturopathic doctor, functional doctors. If you go on any of these doctors, functional doctors, naturopathic doctors, on their website, you will see, if you Google autoimmunity, that they will all create the same condition, meaning we don't know where it comes, it cannot be cured, this is what we can do from a functional medicine perspective, which is the same green scenario that your allopathic community gives you, just that the solution, the remedies, the treatment, so to speak, because they don't give you solutions, but the solution presented are a little bit much more devastating from the medical, traditional medical community. So today, instead, we're talking how to effectively reverse. Can it be reversed? 100%. Why? I have done it personally. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I have 0 antibodies in my body that, Hashimoto's is no longer present in my body. And I was also diagnosed with Sjogren. Same for that. I'm 100% asymptomatic and 100% free and clear from my blood. But I've done this with a lot of my clients. So this is why I created the Reversing Autoimmunity program. This can be done, and it is based not on the multiple books I studied in med school. It is based on common sense medicine, I will call it, clinical observation, and then proven and tested programs and protocols that will allow us to erase the cellular memory. So if we understand that we are delocalizing, we're not thinking in silos like our culture tells us to do. So you have a doctor for your thyroid, you have a doctor for your ovary. This is mental. Just the system is already wrong. If the body is a separated, element. The body is an integrated system. So when you hear someone talking about integrative medicine, then ask them what that means. Because even them that I had so much hope for, they're still very myopic in their vision. So integrative medicine, but it's all about the gut. Now, yes, of course, the gut has a major importance in reversing autoimmunity because most of the immune system is in the gut. But where else is the immune system? We're going to discuss. But regardless, how do we get to a gut issues? It's not the gut per se that turns, it's the cells within the gut that are damaged. So it's a conversation that must happen at cellular level and not on a specific organ level or a specific system level. Even when we do the lymphatic reset, I call the lymphatic reset program, you guys, but for those of you who have done it with me, you know that we barely talk about the lymphatic system. We understand how the lymphatic system works, but then we're going to be talking about the body as an integrated system, because if you want to reverse any disease, you have to look at the body on a cellular level. You have to detox the body on a cellular level, not on an organ level. You can't just detox the liver. This is not how the body works. This is sci-fi. This is like fairy tale, you know, the ones I tell my daughter. So the body doesn't work in isolation. You can take anything from your mouth that goes down that's going to go straight to the liver and not affect everything else in your body. I mean, I know it's common sense, because when we talk, whether it's my private groups or in my certification groups with the coaches, I mean, everything makes sense. So does it make sense to you what I'm saying? I don't want you to take my word for it, but just, you know, tune in and ask yourself, does it make sense? Does it resonate what she's saying? So you cannot act on a specific organ only unless you open up, you do a surgery and you start working on the organ. But every time you take something and they tell you that this is for your liver, this is for your gallbladder, your body doesn't know how to just take that pill, metabolize it, and send it straight to your gallbladder. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't know how to send that straight to your liver. It is absorbed. Whatever you're taking, whatever you're eating or not eating, it is absorbed at cellular level. That means all the cells are taking it. Do you understand the fairy tale and the bubble that a lot of us have been living in by following and chasing localized spots in the body and taking remedies that sell you that they will act on the specific organ? This is not how the body works. The body works is an integrated system. It works in symbiosis. And I tell you that everything you take that pass through your mouth, the body will adjust. Not just your liver, not just your lungs, not just your heart. It's a cellular situation where the body will adjust, like by osmosis. So if you take a lot of zinc, the body will adjust. It's receiving the information. If you take D3, the body will adjust. If you take hormones for your thyroid, the body will stop making hormones. Why? Because it will adjust. Because the body does not know sickness, which is another probably truth bomb. What do I mean by that? The body is not sick. And that is a major mindset shift. What does it mean the body is not sick? Because some of you may be, I am sick. I have this pain. I cannot do this anymore. This is happening to me. The body is not sick. What you see, the symptoms you're experiencing, is the body working on their plan B, C, and D to try to compensate for the obstacles there are multiple obstacles being placed. So, but if you're still watching, if you're still breathing, you're not sick. Because remember this, the body does not know sickness. When the body stops working is when you die. That's it. But there's no way that your body has stopped working. Even if on the surface it looks like you have hypothyroidism, so the functions of your thyroid are a little bit suppressed, there is a reason for it, not because the body is broken, because something is impeding it. So I think in the last live I showed something like this, like it's like you're trying to go up the stairs and something is pushing you down, and you try to go up the stairs and it's pushing you down. The problem is not that you don't know how to go up the stairs. The problem is that there's something pushing you down. So to reverse condition, you don't have to teach the body how to go up the stairs again. The body has not forgotten. The body does not forget how to be healthy. The body does not know sickness. What you need to do is to remove this weight that is impeding the body from doing its work. And the moment you remove the weight, then the body knows exactly what to do. It was never broken to begin with. And you guys, this is a major mindset shift and truth bomb, however you want to call it, because when I talk and teach this, people are like, I've lived most of my life thinking I was sick. I've lived most of my life thinking I was broken. And you know why this is important to kind of digest very quickly here? Because your approach to life, your relationship with yourself changes the moment you really internalize and you embrace the fact that you're not sick. No matter what the symptoms are that you're feeling right now, your body's not broken, you're not sick. Now, you're experiencing symptoms, absolutely, and your body is struggling to keep you alive, but the body's not broken. So let's go to the root cause of what is pushing the body and preventing the body from doing the work that it was designed to do. Does it make sense, you guys? Yes? Okay. So, I said to you guys that we need to erase cellular memory. So just for those of you that may be starting to watch now, I said these are the three options that you get. Medical community will be telling you that you must quiet down the immune system. And if that's the assumption, their remedy is suppress it. Suppress the immune system because we must quiet it down. Functional medicine will tell you you have to reduce its need for activation. So they will try to manage, but none of them are thinking about reversing and solutions because both of them, they're still very trapped in that mentality of isolation, right? Silos. It's a thyroid issue, it's a liver issue, it's a kidney issue, it's a joint issue. They're still trapped in that mentality that is a divisive, is a localized mentality. And for this reason, when you're so close to something, you can't see the bigger picture because there is where the answer is. But since they're so focused into the localization of the problem, then they're missing the big picture, which is, oh, wait a minute, this is not just happening in the kidneys. It's happening everywhere on a cellular level. Based on my genetic weaknesses, based on my lifestyle, based on my emotional trauma, how frozen I am in trauma, and we can discuss that as well. This is where it shows up. So we know, and if any of you have read the super small book from Louise Hay, You Can Heal Yourself, she associates every part of the body, every disease to an emotional unexpressed trauma, right? So obviously people with thyroid issues or anything that pertain to this area are people that have not been expressing their voice. This is a factor. As much as on a cellular level damaging is happening, I'm not denying this, but we will understand why this is happening. The other 50% of the problem is the emotional component that is being now expressed through body symptoms, to physical symptoms, okay? So there's a reason why you get the thyroid problem and you don't get the ovary problems, right? There's a reason why you get the joint problem and you don't get, a skin problem. But the root cause and the way to resolve it and reverse it. And again, you guys, if you heard other people talking, I don't know how many other people are really talking about reversing completely. Everybody's yo-yoing between, remission of symptoms, cycling on and off. And God forbid they have a piece of gluten, it's going to return. That is not reversing anything, you guys. If you say, you know what, I reverse my autoimmunity, but I can stay symptoms free as long as I take all the supplements, only eat these things, avoid all these other things, then I've reversed my immune system, my autoimmunity. No, you have put yourself in a cage. You are basically buried alive and you're basically managing not to feel that pain. But you guys, there's so much more that goes on into that pain that you feel. And by just aiming and managing that pain and feeling like, how many days can I stay symptoms free in 365 days? How many days do I manage to stay symptoms free? And then you blame the piece of gluten for the reoccurrence of your symptoms. You guys, it's not the gluten. Why? How do I know that? You want to know how do I know that? Because again, this is no big scientist here talking to you guys. I don't have millions of dollars in the lab where I can do research. I have eyes and I can read books, but I most importantly use my common sense. And then I see if it makes sense on a clinical level. So how do I know that the gluten is not the problem? Because there's millions of people eating gluten, eating cheese, eating eggs, drinking milk, who will never develop an autoimmune condition. Why? Why? If it was the gluten, if it was the milk, if it was the sugar, why? Now, I'm not here to tell you that you have to eat all these things. I'm just offering you the food for thought of thinking. There's a lot of people. I come from Italy, Italians, French, Spanish, a lot of European in general, like Northern European also, big cheese meat eaters. And how come not everybody is dying of autoimmune conditions or cancer? They're not. So doesn't the body work the same way? What is happening? So again, if you continue to zoom in and not have the bird eye view onto how your body works, you will always yo-yoing between, period of remission and period of reoccurrence. And then you're going to accept that this is the best that you can get. This is going to be the rest of your life. But remember, you are still going to be an autoimmune patient, and you still could fall under the 26-year, shorter lifespan that we discussed at the beginning of this call, because you have not reversed it. In other way, you have not erased the cellular memory that I said to you guys at the beginning of how the cells responds in the presence of a specific trigger. Right? So as I said, if you're symptoms free, but symptoms returns by the time every time you eat a piece of gluten, you have not erased that memory. Meaning the cells have now an innate, it's called implicit memory, where they just will react. This is what allergies are, right? The immune system will just be triggered. Whether it has a reason or not, it will be triggered because now as encoded that gluten is inflammatory. And so that's how we need to respond. This is wrong. Now, I know I may be blowing your mind right now. I know that I might be blowing people's thoughts of what truly caused autoimmunity and how to reverse, how to manage it. But if you really are curious about, is it possible that what she's saying is true? I've done it with myself, as I said to you guys, twice. I've done for 2 different conditions. I've done it with most of my clients. So if what I'm saying resonates with you, then keep listening. If you think that I'm saying things that make absolutely no sense, then you don't have to listen to me. Of course, it's always your choice. But here I'm telling you that in order for you to actually reverse autoimmunity, you have to erase the cellular memory. In other words, you have to have cells that are either regenerated or created brand new that don't know that in the presence of gluten, they have to be triggered, they have to mount an inflammatory response. Like, I'm trying to make it simple, but this is what it is. Meaning, if you have old cells that are just managed and tamed, in other words, for diabetics, for instance, have you noticed the traditional diet is remove all the sugar, get the insulin, I'm good. But really, no, you're not good, because the moment I give you some sugar, your insulin is going to spike, right? So clearly, no, you're not still able to metabolize sugar. So you're not good. Simply because I remove triggers, it doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that your body will not react the same way that it always has, because you simply remove the trigger. So again, getting off of gluten, getting off of sugar, it can help you to a certain point to go into suppression of symptoms. But if in the presence of the same trigger, your body will react the same way, then you have not healed, you have not erased the cellular memory. In other words, you have to tell your cells, even in the presence of gluten, you're not going to react this way. This is what we're going for. And this can be done. This is what brings your blood to show no autoimmune markers. This is what allows you to go to Italy, have a pizza and a glass of wine, and not become symptomatic because you've done so. Does it make sense? And this is why a lot of people in European countries, especially Italy, Spain, France, continue to eat milk, gluten, sugar, coffee, their cappuccinos and baguettes and croissants, and they don't all end up with breast cancer. They don't all end up with autoimmune conditions. They don't all end up with diabetes. They don't all end up with, morbidly obese. Doesn't the body work the same way? How can these people eat gluten and get away with it? So, you guys, we have to erase the cellular memory. Does it make sense? Now, what I said at the beginning, whether the autoimmunity shows up in different parts of your body, although it's a systemic issue, meaning at a cellular level, every cell is interested in this problem, is at least activated. There are some individual predispositions, right? So that is only 1% genetics though. Because if you heard me talking before, genetics accounts for 1% of what's happening to you. 99% is your lifestyle choices. And by lifestyle choices, we mean everything. So the work you do, the food you eat. Because when they talk about genetics, and I see families at the supermarket, the mom, definitely overweight. The father, extremely overweight. Both kids, very overweight. All of them, diabetics. And even the kids, they might not even be aware that they are diabetics yet. I can see some of the signs. You can see a thickening and darkening of their skin on the neck level behind the back here. And, sometimes I really have to stop myself because what do? I then look at the grocery cart. That is where diabetes comes from, not from their genes. When you see 4 people and they're all like overweight, or they're all seem to, there's no reason why a 12-year-old is overweight. There's no reason. Unless we're looking at the 99% of the causes, which is called epigenetics, which is activation of genes based on lifestyle choices. So what does this family have in common besides genes? What they put in the grocery cart, the way they deal with life, the stress level they're all under. So that makes that little family of 4 at the grocery store a diabetic family. 1% only is the genetic component of what that is, including. 99% is all the other choices and all the other attitude towards life that makes also this 12-year-old kid being diabetic and at such an early age, okay? So we have to look at our emotional predisposition. We have to look at our habits in my life, meaning are there some people, like I mentioned, some people in Europe, they're having the milks, they're having their baguette and gluten, and they're fine. Because there are individual predisposition. This is a fact. That's why some people get it, some people don't get it. But this is true with everything. That's why some people with COVID, they get extremely sick, and maybe they continue to have long COVID, and some people don't. But that has nothing to do with the genetics per se. This has everything to do with the terrain, and the terrain creates your predisposition, and your predisposition is not just physical. So am I emotionally predisposed to get an autoimmune condition? What are the habits in my life that could predispose me to get eventually an autoimmune condition? What does my environment look like that could potentially contribute to create an autoimmune condition? What is my stress level that could potentially lead me to have an autoimmune condition? Does it make sense? Genetics is only 1% of this. Okay, so let's go into how autoimmunity evolves and presents itself, and see, because again, if we trickle down to the root cause, what's really happening in the body, stop delocalizing, right? So stop localizing and start delocalizing, looking at the body overall. So the moment you get diagnosed with Hashimoto's, don't focus on your thyroid. That is not where the problem is. Look at the system and see how can you resolve your problem at cellular level, because that's where the problem is. And if you don't resolve it at cellular level, most often like it happens, you're not going to just stay with your Hashimoto's. You're going to develop RA. You may be developing lupus. Why? Because basically disease, all diseases, but in this case we're talking about autoimmunity, it's like a engine light on in the car. The light is your autoimmune condition, but the light is not the problem. The light is alerting you that there is a problem in the car, but the light per se is not the problem. You can, potentially switch off your electric system in the car and you don't see the light anymore. Doesn't mean the issue is not there. If there's a problem with the engine, just the fact that you turn off that light, it doesn't mean that the engine is no longer there. The problem in the engine is no longer there. And that's what's happening with 90% of the people undergoing autoimmune condition and treatment for it. Whether you choose the traditional allopathic way or you decide to go to functional doctors, MDs, that's what's happening. They're basically pulling the plug so that, best case scenario, you don't see the light engine on. But when you live a life on immune suppressant, you might not feel the pain as much anymore, but it doesn't mean the root cause, the disease, the moment they take you off the immune suppressant, the pain is there. Does it make sense? So your autoimmune condition is the engine light. It's not the problem. Remember this analogy. So if you look at your issues as your imbalances, your diagnosis as the engine light, then where's the problem? And as we discussed this morning, it's a cellular level everywhere. Where is the problem? Everywhere. Because it's just a matter of time before you start to develop multiple other conditions, fibromyalgia, lupus, RA. But it started with a thyroid issue because it was never a thyroid issue. It was never an isolated issue, okay? Now, we talked about predisposition, right? We talked about the fact that whether you've been diagnosed or not, you may currently be having antibodies for specific, so-called disease, autoimmune condition labels, and not even know because you don't have symptoms you're never going to be tested for. Okay. So what are some of the early signs of possible development of autoimmune condition in the future? And listen up because most of you may find themselves in this description. So maldigestion, that could be gas, bloating after a meal. Constipation. I would say that 99.9% of all the clients that I work with autoimmune condition and they join my reversing autoimmunity program have had chronic constipation. So chronic constipation is the early sign. And you guys, it's such a complex, an important factor that it will not just lead you to, continue constipation, not addressing the root cause of constipation, that again, it's never in the gut, will lead to all sorts of dysfunctions. Because when you're not able to eliminate toxicity, what do you expect? But constipation is one of the earliest signs. Even kids right now, the parents are concerned that like my child is constipated. It is a problem. And these kids are developing autoimmune condition earlier and earlier and earlier in life. So, and again, allergy is an autoimmune condition. Does it make sense? Allergies is probably the simplest and the most, the one that comes first. We have kids, we have babies with allergies, with sensitivities. Why? Because the immune system is triggered, as learned, implicit memory, to react a certain way in the presence of something. Now, we attribute this to gluten and other things, but you will realize that this is not at all the problem. So early signs of possible development of autoimmunity in the future. So maldigestion, malabsorption, constipation or diarrhea, indigestive food in your bowel, a difficult transient time. And I'm going to tell you what the transient time is, meaning how long does it take for you to digest your food. In my lymphatic reset program, I teach people that a normal bowel movement has to be 2 to 3 times a day. If this doesn't happen, you're already having issue. If you go once a day to the bathroom, you are constipated. Obviously, let alone if you skip a day. But once a day is already constipation. You should be going to the bathroom first thing in the morning before you even eat anything, and then 2 to 3 times depending what is your food intake. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, you're constipated. Diarrhea, of course, is we could say that is the different side of the coin of constipation. So obviously digestion. Any issue with digestion is an early sign of possible development of autoimmunity in the future, right? But let's talk about how often you get sick, because autoimmunity is for sure something that affects the immune system. Again, I don't say that it's a fault or it's a dysfunction of the immune system. Something is affecting the immune system. So has to do with the immune system, right? At least on this, we're all clear. But what's happening to the immune system? So obviously functional medicine goes into the gut and say, well, we have, a good 70% of our immune system there. Something must be happening there. absolutely something is happening there, yet it's still happening all over the body because cells are not working in isolation. And the fluid system that is taking care of feeding them and cleaning them goes throughout the body, doesn't just go to the gut and get stuck in there, right? So if you're carrying dirty blood, it's going to feed all the cells. It's not just going to feed the cells in your gut. If your lymphatic system is stagnant, lymphatic system is your sewage system of the body, the system that is 3 to 4 times bigger and longer than your circulatory system, because it has to take all the toxicity on site to all the cells and escort them through the different elimination pathways. So if there's an issue at lymphatic level, there's an issue everywhere at lymphatic level because it's like a big highway. But if the highway is congested somewhere, you know, you can have 5 miles away and you're already in traffic. Why? Even though there wasn't an issue, you know, 5 exit before, but you're still going to be in traffic because there's a congestion, you know, 5 miles ahead. So again, if there's a problem, and we talked about digestion or any type of digestive issues, constipation, diarrhea, gas, inability to digest fatty food, fat in the stool, long trains in time. So if there's a condition, a digestive level, it's not just a condition of digestive level. This is where it's going to show up, but it's not only a condition, because what caused that imbalance goes back to the cells, the blood, and the lymph, remember? Okay, so what else? Now, some symptoms could be chronic fatigue syndrome that you start having that could potentially lead you eventually to an autoimmune condition. As I said, digestive issues could be, we talked about how often do you get sick, meaning how often do you start feeling under the weather? So do you often get sick? Do you often get, cough and colds or fever? Is that happening often? And where is that coming from? From your gut? Not necessarily. Why? Because your immune system is not only in your gut. Where is the rest of your immune system? And I would say, where is the most important part of your immune system when it comes to airborne germs and pathogens? Who is in charge of defending you from that invasion, so to speak? Your immune system. True. But what part of your immune system? It's your T cells. Those are the first responders. The ones that, you know, when you start feeling like, I don't know, I feel I'm getting something, but I don't know. And so depending on what you do, the circumstances, you might end up getting sick with a cold or flu or COVID or whatever that is, or you may not. But maybe the first day you're like, I'm feeling body aches, maybe I'm sneezing, but then you eventually end up overcoming it and you don't get sick. What happened in your body? What is the system in your body that has worked the way it was supposed to, and you end up not developing the full-blown flu or cold? That's your immune system, the T cells that are in your lymphatic system. So wait a minute, did I mention lymphatic system before? Yes. Why did I mention lymphatic system? Because it was the other second system, remember, cells, that needs to be fed and clean. So wait a minute, so my immune system, that when we talk autoimmunity, obviously plays an important role, right? It's autoimmune condition. We're talking about the immune system. What is affecting the immune system? Okay, immune system mostly in the gut and in my lymphatic system, and especially my ability to catch or not or fend off a disease, flu or pathogenic assault, has to have something to do with my lymphatic system, because that's where the T cells are. Even COVID, they slowly now, research is slowly, very slowly, tried coming to the conclusion that it has to be an involvement of the lymphatic system in the outcome and the prognosis of COVID. Why? Because the T cells are there. In fact, there are studies that have shown in relationship to COVID that the antibodies are short-lived, right? You get COVID for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You might show antibodies in your blood and then no more. But people that even without antibodies were still very resistant to the disease, it was shown that there were some T cells specifically specifically apted at fending off COVID. So the lasting resistance to COVID, even the different strains, seems to lie into the T cells in your lymphatic system, not in your antibodies. Does it make sense? So the lymphatic system plays a huge role into your ability to fend off pathogens, right? Even the ones that you think you already have on, because Ants just was talking to us about EBV, right? So EBV is an opportunistic virus. It's usually dormant or it creates not in the first expression. If you don't end up with can't think of the word right now, with the major expression of ABV, which I really can't think of the word for the life of mine, but it will remain in your system dormant or create a low grade kind of viral activity there, but not major, like when you get COVID, right? So even the viruses that you have in you already, like the herpetic viruses, that they seem to remain in the system on a low grade level, right? Sometimes dormant, sometimes more activated, but their presence and their activation or not, it's directly related to the functioning of your immune system, to the functioning of the immune system that resides in your lymphatic system, because that is the system that allows us to, keep the germs at bay and sometimes eliminate them, right? Some we eliminate, some we live with. That's just how we were designed. As I said, we have 6 pounds of microbes in our gut, and our balance, our well-being depends on the balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. They all serve a purpose, even the so-called bad bacteria, okay? Because we're hosts, and that's what we do. We were designed to live in symbiosis with the pathogens rather than fear them. So when we talk to autoimmune condition and reversal, I talked to you guys about erasing cellular memory. But how do we erase cellular memory? So, or should we go one step back? How do the cell get turned to begin with? Meaning, how do the cells start being damaged to the point that they overreact to the gluten? They overreact to something that maybe they weren't supposed to react. First of all, the assumption is that the body, the immune system, will react to body tissues that are healthy. So now, some of you coming from medical medium may have heard a medical medium talking about the fact that the immune system is responding and attacking the viruses that are within the cells. I tend to agree. The immune system is definitely attacking something. I just don't agree that it's only attacking viruses. I think the immune system is attacking toxicity. And so in that, remember when at the very beginning of this call, I said to you guys, the body does not know disease, does not know sickness. This is not how the body works. If you're still alive, you're not sick. Your body might be struggling into keeping you healthy by design on plan A. So it's going now due to obstacles on plan B, C, and D, right? We know, for instance, that when our thyroid is under attack, our adrenals may supply hormones for the thyroid and vice versa. So there is a communication. Remember when I told you we're integrated system? You can't think about localization, the thyroid, the liver, the lungs, the kidneys. You can't think like that. So remember, the problem is never where it hurts. Don't forget this. So we were saying that what happens when the cells are turned? So we now start to understand that the immune system is actually attacking something. So it's not going crazy and all of a sudden attacking healthy tissue of our own body. It's going after something, and it is going after toxicity. Why? Because remember, when you develop any disease, not just an autoimmune condition, but more and more, science is showing us that every chronic condition has some level of some component. There are antibodies showing for most people, and that is because there must be an immune system component, an immune system action. But the immune system will react to what? To pathogens, yes, viruses, bacteria, things that don't belong, including chemicals, pesticides, heavy metals, toxicity that doesn't belong in the body. Does it make sense? So how do we end up having, some people have more toxicity than others? Why? Because some people are more able to eliminate than other that toxicity. So everything goes back to, are these cells being fed? And if so, what is the quality of this food? And I'm not talking about the quality of the food you eat. I'm talking about the quality of your blood. That, of course, is directly influenced by what you feed yourself. But when you think cellular level, you can't think muffin. You have to think blood. So is the cell being fed? And if so, what is the quality of that blood? Is the cell being cleaned? And so, what is the quality of the situation of the lymph? Because remember, we said the lymphatic system is a highway. And even if there's a clog, 5 miles ahead, everybody's going to be stuck in traffic 5 miles behind. So if there's a stagnation, doesn't matter where in the body, a lymphatic level, then these cells cannot be cleaned properly. Okay, so what happens when the cells are not clean? They're basically, visually, I want to picture that. They're basically bathing in their own poop. So it's basically your child wearing a diaper and going to the bathroom repeatedly, and nobody's changing that diaper. What do you think is going to happen? The least is going to have a big, rush on our little tender bum, right? But imagine keeping this toxicity there. Nobody's wiping, nobody's bathing that child, and that poop remains there. So how do cells turn? How do cells get damaged? They get damaged not because the immune system gets crazy. They get damaged because they are bathing in their own poop. They're not being cleaned and or fed properly. So if the cell doesn't receive proper food, proper oxygenation, the cell will die. Does it make sense? Okay. So the cell will die. So if the minimal will get damaged, right? But also, if the cells don't get clean, they will be bathing in their own poop. And this toxicity, the poop, I call it poop, but it's toxicity, right? And it's two types of toxicity. The toxicity that comes from outside, your heavy metals, your pesticides, right? But also there's a toxicity that it is produced by their own cell functions, right? So you see the body, and you know that we eat, we have to eliminate, and then we eat again, and then we eliminate again, right? But what some of you may not know is that this process of metabolization and elimination happens all the way down to cell level. So we know that the bugs inside of your body go through a metabolic process. So they eat and they eliminate. The viruses, the EBV in your body eats and eliminates. Your microbiome, remember this trillions of cells that you have in your body, good bacteria, bad bacteria, that are so important to our balance, they eat and they eliminate. This is the condition of life, you guys. So the food that they're fed is essential, the quality of your blood. The elimination, though, is even more essential, because if the elimination doesn't happen, again, they bathe on their own poop, but the quality of that elimination also plays a role. So when you have an overgrowth of bacteria like SIBO, right? Small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So what happens here? It happens that you got this overgrowth of bacteria that have their own metabolism, right? They have their own digestive process, and they have their own elimination process. That elimination, this byproduct, we call it, is toxic. So the more bad bugs you got, the more toxic byproduct you will have in your body. Does it make sense so far? Okay, so the cells, if they're not fed properly and they're not cleaned properly, they're gonna stay bathing in their poop, and eventually this toxicity, which is very corrosive because on a chemical level is acidity, it's gonna enter the cell and damage the cells from the inside out. This is another expression of cancer. This is what cancer is. So when we look at autoimmunity, we have to forget the fact that the body is attacking healthy tissues. The body is attacking tissues in which toxicity is trapped. So why? Because the immune system role is to signal It's the car engine light that says, hey, inflammation. There's toxicity here, toxicity here. So what it looks like on a blood level, and what it looks like on a traditional level is, oh, the immune system is being triggered, but shouldn't have been. So now the immune system instead was working properly, because when you test, you might not see the toxicity. They don't test for toxicity level. They just test for, are there antibodies there? Is the immune system being triggered? Is the autoimmune system? Yes, and it may be producing antibodies for your thyroid simply because it's trying to attack cells, remember cells, in your body that are either being turned, truthfully, just like the zombie, and now we're in a Halloween time. Cells that bathe in their own poop for too long, they will be turned, they will be damaged, they will be signal tagged for destruction. So wait a minute. So Barbara, is the immune system attacking our own system? Well, very well, maybe, but not because it went crazy, because it's attacking damaged cells. And I explained just now to you guys how cells get damaged if they're not fed properly, if they're not cleaned properly. So those cells that have been damaged has to be tagged for destruction. But if this is the case, you guys, and this must be the most mind-blowing thing that you ever heard. If this is the case, why is this important, Barbara, this conversation, you're giving us all this technical information? Because if we agree to this conversation, and that's the conversation I had with myself, right? And then I went ahead and tested it, and then I went ahead and experimented on myself. And guess what? We reversed completely autoimmunity. So if this is the case, what am I saying? Why it's important? Because if we then understand the immune system is not attacking itself, we will never use immune suppressant, because in fact we need immune system in its full capacity to help us do the work that we need to do. If we understand that it's a systemic issue and it's this problem where toxicity is causing the cells to turn, then instead of acting on the virus, instead of acting on the immune system suppressing it, instead of acting only in isolation and localization to the gut, then we realize that we need to act on that toxicity. If I eliminate the toxicity, the immune system will continue to do the work that it knows exactly how to do. In fact, what seems like a disease, like I told you at the beginning, the body does not know disease, was actually your immune system screaming louder and louder. Hello, do you see this now? Because you've been having this toxicity for a while, and there's only so much I can do. Because remember, as we start to, from birth on, usually we have more time to hold on to toxicity, to hoard, what I call the hoard toxicity. Why? Based on all the things that we also discussed at the beginning of this call. Individual predisposition, only 1% though is genetic. Everything else has to do with the choices in your life, the amount of stress, the amount of what type of emotions, what kind of job, the kind of food, the kind of environment. All of this creates your unique predisposition. But if you don't listen to the calling of the body, the first whispers, and then, ever so loudly start to knock, eventually you're going to end up with a big diagnosis. But the big diagnosis versus a small diagnosis is the same thing. It just shows us how much more time this toxicity has been going on without being addressed than, someone that just developed a simple allergy. Allergy and cancer, and again, I'm saying it here until they take me down, basically have the same root cause, which is the body's inability to eliminate toxicity, and this toxicity damaging the cells from the inside out. So if we understand that, we know that to reverse autoimmunity, we have to go after toxins and we have to let the immune system do the work. But how do we go after toxins? Well, we can't just say heavy metals, I'm going after heavy metals, because then we have to ask ourselves, okay, but why are these toxins in there? Why are my cells bathing in toxins? My husband apparently seems to be doing fine. He's having bacon and eggs and he's doing fine. My mom has been eating cheese and bread since she was little and now she's 78. How come? They don't have toxins? Well, so what is the system in charge of eliminating your toxins? Well, it's a system one, the lymphatic system, but it relies on the elimination, which is basically the opening, the doors, for this toxicity to go out. Now, it's a vicious cycle because, as I said, we can't look individually at the system. Like, it's a lymphatic system issue. By the time you have a lymphatic system issue, you have a whole systemic issue. So your liver is a problem, your kidneys is a problem, your lungs is a problem, your skin is a problem, right? So again, we're never, and you're never going to hear from me that there's a localized issue and you have to act on that issue, because this is simply not true, and this is not how the body works. But this is also why there's 150 million and many more walking without diagnosis with autoimmune condition in the world, and most of these conditions have not been reversed. Now, some of you may say, well, I used to have Hashimoto's, but I have no symptoms. Well, it may just be a matter of time. Now, it doesn't mean, possibly, if you've done the work right, then you have completely reversed your Hashimoto's. But the people that come to me, obviously, because they need help, they have not being able to reverse the disease. They at best being able to experience period of remissions. But those remissions has also placed them into a box where they feel trapped, in the sense that the only way for me to stay symptoms free is to live this lifestyle. And I can go to a date night, I can have a baby shower, I can go out, and not because there aren't so many alternatives, right? Because there's a doctor, I really like her, and she's really big on the autoimmune community world. But this doctor is still a doctor that tend, because of her own stories and her own success, to still put people in a cage, meaning I can reverse your symptoms, but you gotta eat like this for the rest of your life. And that, to me, is something that I am not really in agreement with. Because every time you place someone in a cage, then you're gonna start, it's basically like chemotherapy, right? It might help you wipe the bad cells off, but also the good ones. So when you place people in the cells and say, well, look, by all these smoothies and all these juices and all these salads, we were able to reverse symptoms. No more joint pain, no more, butterfly rush for lupus, no more kidney dysfunctions. But God forbid you have a piece of cake. God forbid you have a glass of wine. And that is also not healthy, because it will create a whole other host of issues. That, remember when we talked about individual predisposition, one of the questions was, what is your emotional situation? So if you are able to reverse symptoms or suppress symptoms by a certain dietary choices, but then you living depressed, isolated, without feeling that you're missing out on life, and there's, whether you say it or not, I have a lot of clients that came to me completely enraged. And rage, all these low vibrational emotions, take space in your body, you guys. Change the chemistry of your body. So if you're living in this box where you're like, I was able to get off my medications for Hashimoto's, for lupus, I have no more pain, this is great. But if I end up camping with my family and have us more, then forget about it. I'm gonna have, the Christmas tree lighting up all over again. So then, A, you have not healed, but 2, you live in the same constant state of fear, which in turn will switch your body into a sympathetic state, also known as fight or flight and freeze, that is detrimental for what? For what we wanted to do before. Because in a fight or flight state, you don't digest properly. Hello, I did say to you that one of the precursor signs of autoimmunity is bad digestion. So, but you shut off digestion in a fight or flight mode by design. Not just you, this is how we were designed. You don't rest properly. Hello, sleep, it's really important, because it's the only time that you have to really detoxify, but also to calm down your system. 3, you don't detox. So if you live in a state of fear, even by having all your smoothies and all your juices and all your salads, but you've placed yourself in that box, you might still not be able to reverse your symptoms permanently, because you by default are living in fear. And by default, and chemically and physiologically, you're putting yourself in a state of non-remission, because you cannot detoxify, you cannot digest, you cannot rest, and with this state, that cannot be held. Does it make sense? So, what else? What else I wanted to discuss to you today? So today we were talking about autoimmunity, why it comes, and in a nutshell, it's because your cells are bathing in their own poop, because toxicity is stagnant And when we look at where does toxicity comes from, we have to realize that our immune system, our lymphatic system is in charge of eliminating this toxicity, right? Collecting, so to speak, I should say, because the lymphatic system doesn't have a spout, right? Doesn't have an exit. So it still relies on other organs. That's why we're an integrated system. So, but if your lymphatic system, that is your sewage system, is not working properly, then your cells may be bathing in their own poop, right? So at that point, the immune system gets activated because it's triggered by that toxicity. Now, there are levels of toxicity, because some of you I can already hear saying, well, Barbara, but it's not true for me. I am fine as long as I don't eat gluten. I am fine as long as I don't have coffee or whatever that may be. And every time I have gluten or fat or whatever that is, I become symptomatic. Well, why? Because what you have done up to now maybe got you to a place of stabilization, meaning as long as I eat like this, as long as I, do these things, I can manage. I have no symptoms. But the moment I go out and have a piece of gluten, symptoms reoccur because you are managing. So if this is capacity, and by capacity, I want you to envision a vase filled with liquid, that would be your toxicity, all sorts of toxicity, from viruses to metals to pesticides, anyway, all toxicity, emotional toxicity, but this is your toxic bucket. So if you're a capacity, anything can make spill that vase. So you can call it gluten if that's what you ate, but what it tells us, since we have millions of people eating gluten with no side effects, or millions of people eating gluten once in a while with no side effects, what it's telling us is that if your body doesn't necessarily have to react to gluten. If it does, it's because that was the drop that spilled the vase. When your toxicity, your capacity, toxicity-wise, then anything can make it spill. It may be another thing. Maybe the loss of a loved one. Doesn't even have to be food. Loss of the loved one, and people develop cancer, develop autoimmunity. But why? Because your toxicity level was a capacity. So if you do all the things you do, and you just manage to experience a temporary remission of symptoms, you have not healed, you have not erased the cellular memory. So what we need to do is to drastically reduce that toxicity so that you make that space, and you're able to go and have a pizza with your family and not become symptomatic again. Now, I'm not here to say condone have pizza every day, because nobody can get away with that. You need your fruits, you need your vegetables, but you can absolutely have your pizza and your wine, have your cupcakes, whatever that is, your date night, and not having to become symptomatic. And what that does is removes the fear. Because believe it or not, and you guys can chime in and agree or not agree, let us know, you are living in a cage that you put yourself in, and you're living in a constant fight or flight. And that is why you're not getting better, because there's no freedom in the choices. Ask yourself, are you doing what you're doing to manage to stay symptoms free? If you've managed, because a lot of you come to me and they're like, I've been doing this for a while and it's not working. I'm still symptomatic, I still have reoccurrences, I'm still in pain. So, but even if you have managed to reduce your symptoms and experience a longer period of remissions, it will only be temporary if you don't understand where does autoimmunity come from, what is the root cause of autoimmunity, what do we need to do to address autoimmunity to finally reverse that. So once you eliminate your toxicity, because it is a stagnation level, autoimmunity, like anything else, it is a stagnation level. So when stagnation of what? Toxicity. So toxicity trapped in your body, once you eliminate that toxicity and you create that space, then you have to work on what does balance look like for me in my life. So Barbara is saying that I can go have my pasta and my glass of wine, but how often? What does that look like? And then we have to really work, and that's what we do in my reversing autoimmunity program. We work on your specific case. We do a very advanced testing, which is a bioenergetic testing that works with your saliva and your hair to really pinpoint all the parts in the body. Remember, integrated system. I don't care if you come to me in my program and say, I want to reverse my Hashimoto's. I'm still going to test your whole body to see, and I can predict you and tell you what's going to come and break down next based on this bioenergetic testing that we do in my reversing autoimmunity program. So we do that. We do a stool test. We have basically a very good chemical and physiological picture of you totally non-invasive. And then, but this is not just energetic in terms of I'm there feeling you. No, none of this. This is an actual scientific test with saliva and hair, with a stool test, and we can have pinpoint a picture of where you're at. We can even predict what could be happening based on this picture. But the root cause of it all is always the same. Your body's being unable to eliminate the toxicity. Now, the first thing when we try to eliminate toxicity is to figure out where is this toxicity coming from. Because let's say if you're living in a moldy home, I mean, we can do so much to try to eliminate toxicity, but if the source is still coming in, right? If you have mercury fillings in your mouth, if God forbid you have mercury fillings in your mouth with a crown or braces, that creates galvanization and is basically leaching metals 10 times faster than if you didn't have another type of metal in the mouth. So we have to really address your individual situation. There's a mold situation. Usually when there's a neurological issues, there's also when there's mold issues, there's usually neurological issues due to heavy metals. We can reverse also even autism, you guys. I have a client, the youngest client I've ever had was 1.5 years, that has stopped smiling, that has stopped walking, that was under the guide of, a misinformed practitioner, and was reversing. But a week into the reversing on the immunity program, the child started smiling again, started running again, and he started to improve and grow. Why? Because we address the root cause. We're not just trying to go based on symptoms. Now, we can reverse everything, guys. But if you are watching and you have a child that you are thinking maybe either on the spectrum or, developing even food sensitivities, it is not normal for a child to be having all the allergies. We have a school with my husband, most of you may know. We have over 20 kids. And we see kids with, parents, no, my child doesn't do any nuts. My child doesn't do any this. The mother thinks that, and I said, but are you interested in reversing this? Because a life without nuts, especially if you choose a lifestyle that is a plant-based life, with not meat or not a lot of meat consumption, when you cannot have nuts, it's a very restrictive life, especially because you never know where you can find this nuts. So you need to know, A, is there allergic to everything? And 2, can we undo that? And so we can absolutely undo that. And especially if your children have been artificially inoculated and you suspect, it doesn't have to be autism, it could be just allergies that came up after the vaccine. So all the way up to when they're 7, we can reverse things so easily. We can also work with your own existing condition, even if you're not 7 anymore. But for children, all the way up to 7, we can do a lot of good work, especially if we see that, maybe they start having some heavy metal issues in their brain, and that can be detoxed so much faster than someone that is 45 years old. Okay, so it's important that you understand the root cause if you're interested in reversing autoimmunity. Because again, if you don't reverse autoimmunity, you will still be susceptible to more autoimmune condition, to the 26 shorter lifespan terms that we discussed at the beginning of this call. So if you are interested in really getting to the root cause and really be guided into a specific plan for you that address your specific situation and kind of address a lot of the stagnation in your body. And stagnation is not just a lymphatic level. Stagnation can also be a trauma level, and it will be 100%, I promise you, a component of that, an emotional level, a stress level, inability to change. Like, I know I should change some things, but I'm still like doing, going. I mean, you're not going to reverse autoimmunity like this. So if you finally want to get into a program that allows you to have a blueprint that you can own, I don't want you to come back over and over to me. You can own and say, okay, I can do this. I know what to do. And I know what to do with my children. I know what to do with the people I love. If they agree, you can force people to get healthy. You know that? So then I invite you to consider my Reversing Autoimmunity program. I only offer this program twice a year because it's a very labor-intensive work, because it's a semi-private, so there's a group setting and there's a private setting with me, so I can't do it all the time. I run my lymphatic program and my Soul Circle program every month, but this is a program that I run only twice a year. So if you're interested, just go on my website, barbaramancunismith.com, and just start reading the information about Reversing Autoimmunity program. If you're finally fed up to have to deal with reoccurrences and symptoms, if you feel that this is a death sentence you've been given and you don't really know, for the love of God, how to get over it, then I'm here to help. Okay, guys. So, Mariska, how do I do that test and how much? So, Mariska, this test is a test that is offered through my reversing autoimmunity program. So it's part of the program. You don't pay extra for the test. It's already embedded in the program. Hey, Kasha. Kasha works with me. She's doing Soul Circle. She's been my private client for a while. What is she saying here? When I allow myself to have a no food once, I tend to go overboard with that. Then feel extremely guilty about that. So I guess I'm an emotional eater. So for me, it's better to stay away from no food until I'm completely healed. Otherwise, I ruin my health routine. Well, you see, it's the chicken or the egg, Kasha, and we've talked about this before. What Kasha is saying here is, if I have allow myself to have no food once in a while, then I tend to go overboard. So the problem is not the food she's eating. The problem is that she's not able to contain herself. And as we've discussed before with her, the problem is never on the plate. So everybody should be able to have a drink of, this is my pineapple juice, but a drink, right? Could be a glass of wine, could be a piece of pizza. The question is, can you just have a piece? What Kasha is saying is, I'm not able to have a piece. That is a problem. That has nothing to do with your autoimmunity, with your body not being strong enough. This is to do with unbalance outside of the plate that we then tend to project on the food. So if, let's say, you're stressed, if you're having like I said, stagnation at emotional level, at trauma level, and basically you're spread so thin, you spread thin and thinner and thinner, then the moment you live in deprivation, and that contributes to make you feel spread thinner and thinner and thinner. So if you feel that you're like spread so thin, then you have to sorry, I lost track because I thought my daughter was coming in. So if you spread so thin, then food becomes our outlet, right? So you should be able to have a slice of pizza, not the whole pizza. You should be able to have a piece of whatever and not having to go like Kasha is discussing. So because a solution is, no, I prefer to be restricted, because if I'm restricted until I'm healed. But healing is a working process, it's a journey. There's no like, in 2 weeks, you're going to be healed, in 2 months, and then you can go out and do the things that you were doing before, because you'll be back to where you started here. So finding balance and looking at what's happening outside of the plate, outside of the table, and see where the imbalance lies. Fixing that imbalance so that then with on the table, you don't have to, eat your feelings. You don't have to be an emotional eater that Kasha is talking to us about. You know what I'm saying? So you can't say it's a food problem. It's an imbalance problem, and most of the time it is an emotional issue. So that is what we need to become aware of. The work that must be done. It's not I'm just gonna deprive myself from everything until you might die before you even get to be healed. Whatever healed means, right? So you have to find balance. You have to strive for balance. And most often, the imbalance is never on the plate. When people binge eating, it's not a food issue. It's not my body cannot take, curry versus, gluten. It is the imbalance is somewhere else. And you living a deprived life is contributing to increasing acidity in your body. Remember that toxicity that we want to eliminate so that our immune system is not triggered? Well, your stress level, your feeling deprived, feeling that you can't just go with your husband and have a pizza or whatever it is that you want to have, it's switching your body into an acidic position. It's pumping cortisol and adrenaline. And the thing is, all this is part of your autonomic nervous system. What does that mean? It means that you don't even have to know if you're stressed. Sometimes I ask my clients, how is it going? Are you stressed? They're like, no, I'm all good. Well, but imbalances are still there, so you're not all good. And the autonomic nervous system has embedded a process to where it's going to start firing, even if you don't think you're stressed, even if you say, oh, I'm loving my juice, and this is great, but you're so sad and angry and enraged inside because you can't go and have a date night with your husband. On the other end, you blame yourself because you know that if you do go, then the next morning you want to have something else and a lunch. And like Kasha said, I'm going to be an emotional eater. But she said it, emotional eating. has nothing to do with the food on the plate. It has to do with the emotions that she has not dealt with. Now she's dealing with them because she's in soul circle too. But what I'm saying to you guys, the problem is not on the table, and the food that you refrain yourself from eating is not going to help. I mean, that mentality, because it will increase the acidity level of your body. And acidity is toxicity, because the adrenalines that you're pumping, the cortisol you're pumping, will also have to be eliminated. So you're increasing toxicity, and then you feel worse than before. Or you are like some of you saying, Barbara, I'm having salads, I'm having juices, and I'm still not getting better. Because we can't just look myopically at that plate of yours that you feel like it's an end to um, it's the solution to all. You have to look at the rest of your life. You have to look at the stress. You have to look at your job. Do you love it? You hate it? Do you hate your spouse? Do you feel lonely? Have you not mourned the loss of a loved one? Have you had a miscarriage and not worked through it properly? These are all things that increase toxicity. And when we are compounding all this toxicity, we're spread so thin, then that piece of baguette, that piece of the pasta plate, that cake, the muffin, that cheeseburger, whatever it is that does it for you guys, then feels like, oh, it's what allows your system to go into, okay, I'm now switching to a parasympathetic state. I'm now super relaxed, because you got a little bit of some satisfaction. But we cannot, outsource the healing that needs to happen on emotional or lifestyle level through food. And so what do? You even remove the little piece of happiness that you are giving yourself. This is not how it works. And again, putting yourself in that cage is going to increase acidity in your body. It's a vicious cycle. So you're not going to win it like that. Doesn't make sense, you guys. So anyway, I'm hoping that this live was enlightening for you guys, that kind of maybe spur some thoughts and gave you some inspirations of what else can you do if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and you're not able to reverse it. You have not been able to reverse it. But please do not believe for 1 second that this condition is not reversible. Do not look at your children feeling that, like, so sad and guilty maybe because they are exhibiting some symptoms of what could be whatever level of an immune condition, because you have not done anything wrong, but there's so much good that you can still do, So consider joining my reversing autoimmunity program. We're going to start next month. I offer a 20-minute free, exploratory call to see if this is a plan or a program that works for you. Okay, so go on my website, schedule your call, barbararonconi-smith.com. Under programs, you find autoimmunity program. Schedule your call, and let's see if this is a program that can help you finally reverse and erase your cellular memory of any autoimmune response. Okay, see you next week.